Hello, everyone. Welcome to this is too high. Welcome to another episode. Thank you guys so much for being here. Make sure you guys like the video and subscribe to the channel. On today's show, we're going to be talking about Klopp quitting Liverpool, leaving the club. That announcement was made this morning, and to be honest, I was very, very shocked. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about Arteta's new contract. There are rumors and reports out there that Arteta's new contract is basically done, signed, sealed, and they're just waiting on the right time to announce it. Yeah, December probably wouldn't have been a good time to announce it. January, probably not a good time to announce it. So if they're going to announce it, they'll probably wait for us to start looking a little bit better and then put it out there. But I do want to talk about whether or not that's the right thing to be doing, whether giving Arteta contracts without any tangible success in trophies is the right thing. So we'll talk about that as well. And a little bit about why Bayern are scared of Arsenal. So make sure you guys are smashing the likes. Let's see who's all in here. Let's see. F SAR says, get Klopp now, a proper manager. He's already said that no other English club will he go to, which makes a lot of sense. I mean, you can never see Sir Alex Ferguson or Arsene Wenger going to another English club. So I'm not surprised that he said that. He is very synonymous with Liverpool over the last, let's say, 9 years or so. So there's no way that Arsenal would be able to get him. The time to have gotten him would have been in 2015. And we let that go because we held on to Arsene Wenger too long. So that ship has definitely sailed. Chosen One says, hi, Jess. Gabby got his goal and Saka got his assist. I'm super happy about that. It was always Gabriel's goal. Let's be serious. Like, he 110% deserved that because the ball was going in no matter what. And so for them to have given it as an own goal, I felt like it was just like, this is just nonsense. I'm glad that Arsenal, put in like a dispute for it and Gabriel got his goal because he definitely deserves it. So yeah. And like you said, Saka got his assist. Nuances of Fate says City won, Spurs no. Did Spurs go out? I'll be honest with you guys, I was not interested in this, whatsoever. I peeked in a little bit to kind of see what was going on, but I'll be really honest with you guys. When we go out of these domestic cups, I completely shut off from them because it just annoys me that we're not in them anymore. But yeah, I'm looking at it now. Yeah, Tottenham went out. Yeah, they went out, didn't they? So, or is it definite 2 legs or is there a replay? Yeah, I think, yeah, definitely Tottenham went out. So Tottenham went out and Chelsea and Aston Villa drew. So that means that they'll have to go to Villa Park and do the replay. So more games for them. But I'll be honest with you guys, when we go out of these competitions, I completely shut off from them because I'm mad because we're not in them anymore. Here to There says, cheers, Jess. Expected but disappointing news on Arteta's contract extension. Arteta is the most backed, yes, lowest expectation level of any manager at a big club in Europe. Blaze says, hi, Jess. How are you doing? I'm doing really well. Thank you so much. Issa says, love your jumper. Thank you so much. I wear it all the time. It's the Kaiser Chiefs one. I'm not South African, so yeah, don't hate me or anything. But yeah, I really like it as well. I don't usually wear like a lot of colors, so it's nice to have something that's a little bit different. Lucas says, no trophy for Spurs again. Surprise, surprise. Yeah, but does it really hit the same if we don't get any trophies? I'm starting to get to the point now where it's like, yeah, it's cool that, our rivals are not winning, but if we're not winning, it doesn't hit the same. Nico says, hey, Jess, you messed up with the title. Bayern scared of Arsenal. Oh, okay. I can fix it now. Bayern are scared of Arsenal. That's what happens when you are rushing. All right. So I fixed it. It should be right now. Boy says, in today's news, Spurs were Spursy. Ali A says, talk about Klopp. We will in a second. Saida says, oh, Jess, you look nice. The yellow color really pops on your skin color. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. That's so nice. Richard says, no contract for Lego. Okay. So let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and get into it. There's 100 of you guys in here, so make sure you guys are smashing the likes and setting notifications. Let's start off with the Klopp thing. I mean, I was really shocked. Like, when I woke up this morning, I checked my phone and notifications were going off. And Um, I'll say this first, that I really hope that it's just because he wants to take a rest. Like, I'm hoping that, it's not anything bigger than that or more serious than that, because it's very sudden and very abrupt. The reports out there were saying that the club they knew about this since November, which is crazy because, like, usually you'd get a leak or something like that, but Liverpool tend to be able to keep in this type of information within their ranks without there being any leaks. Like, we've seen it before. They've signed players out of nowhere. They're rarely the type of club that has the leaks, but I'm very surprised that they were able to keep this, under wraps for so long. Now, Klopp is right up there. Like, for me, he's the best manager in the world. I know that some people will be like, "Well, what about Pep?" I'm like, "Yeah, but Klopp has done a lot with a lot less. He's had to make a lot out of what he's had, and he's had to develop players. He's had to buy his time. He's just had to do a lot with a lot less than what Pep has had, and because I've never really seen Pep deal with a team that didn't have all world-class players or be consistently given the money to rebuild or buy, it's hard for me to discount what Klopp has done, despite the fact that he's only won one Premier League trophy. Every single time that, they finish in the Premier League, except for like maybe like the last year, they've been really, really close. They've been within a point. They've really pushed Man City to the very edge. And so um, he also, won a Champions League. If they were to win, I think if they win the Europa League, he will have won everything with them. Like, he's just a fantastic, fantastic manager. And so, as much as I make fun of him and his teeth and his glasses, um, he's he's a legend, really. And so, it is not going to be the same in the Premier League without Jurgen Klopp. It's just not going to be the same. And so, um, as a football fan, it's a little sad. As an Arsenal fan, I'm like, let's go. I'm tired of Klopper. I am tired of Klopp. Okay. If we could get rid of Klopp and Pep, then maybe we'll stand a chance, because realistically, I don't really see there being any other elite managers out there. Now, there are managers out there that are very, very good, and I know a lot of people are looking at like Xabi Alonso and managers like that are like kind of up and coming that could become, but I do think it's really just Pep and Klopp and Ancelotti. And then there's like the next level down of like the Simeones and the Inzagis. Like, there's a big gap, you know? And so we've seen it as Arsenal fans, where when you have a legendary manager leave your club, it's really difficult to replicate that level of success, and you may never replicate it again. Um, and if you do, it may take a long time. It's not easy to be the guy after the guy. It's not easy to move somebody on that's been so successful at your club, and just keep going as business as usual. And I do wonder if Klopp is, kind of looking at the future, and knows how FSG are, knowing that FSG want to exit, knowing that they're looking for a sale, knowing that the likes of Virgil van Dijk and Allison and Salah will have to be replaced, and knowing that, I'd rather leave on a high. This is also a really good time to announce it, because if it could go against them, but I do think that, like, with Liverpool being how they are, they'll galvanize behind this news and try to let Klopp go out on a bang. So they'll try even harder to win, the Europa League. They'll try even harder to win the Premier League. And so he may actually go out with a couple of trophies under his belt as well. So a couple more trophies under his belt. So yeah, it's in the short term, it's like, at least we've already been to Anfield, so we don't have to go through that shit. Um, and go through them like, oh, we can never walk alone. We're all behind and all this shit. I'm so glad we don't have to do that. But I do feel like Liverpool are definitely gonna use this as like a let's go, like let's get Klopp out of here with a couple of trophies. So yeah, we'll see how this affects them in the short term. In the long term, though, unless Liverpool are just special, we know how it is when you lose a manager that's been at your club for damn near a decade. We know that. We know what it's like. So, the obvious, link for them for the next manager, is Xabi Alonso. Um, I'm sure that Bayern are quaking in their boots a little bit, because I'm pretty freaking sure they've done the groundwork in talking to his agent and trying to convince him to go to Bayern after Tuchel leaves. Tuchel's not a long-term solution for anything. And again, when you look at the managerial landscape, it's not really out here looking like there's a lot of guys to choose from. So if you have to look at it and you're like, okay, well, who can I bring in? The most obvious choice is Xabi Alonso. But if you're Xabi, what do? Do you go to a Bayern where you're guaranteed success in the Bundesliga, you're guaranteed Champions League every single season? Or do you really push the envelope and, go to a Liverpool and really try to like make that step up? I don't know. We'll see where, what he's really about. Is he going to stand 10 toes down, or is he going to go the easy route? I think going Bayern is the easy route, but sometimes some managers don't have any interest in the Premier League. So we'll see what happens, but I don't know if it's like, I'm not saying that Liverpool are going to completely fall off or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying, but you've seen what's happened when managers that have been at clubs for long periods of time leave. It's hard to keep the ship settled. There usually is a little bit of a dip, and a new person comes in and they can't replicate it. It's hard. The fans are so like emotionally attached to somebody. I'm sure Liverpool fans are going through it right now. So we'll definitely see what happens. Here to there says Bayern haven't kept a manager longer than 18 months. I would go Liverpool if I was Xabi. Nuances of Fate says Liverpool are a mess upstairs, which is where succession matters. That's the difference between City and most Prem clubs. Issa says, but he'd have to win the Bundesliga for that. Let's see. Isa, let me get your first message. Says Xabi could also maybe go to Real Madrid if Ancelotti doesn't win the league or the UCL. Yeah, this is true. He also has Real Madrid as a potential option too. Raw Winder says, I think we should stick with Arteta. Look at Pep. It took him 13 years to win a Champions League. Yeah, but it didn't take him 13 years to come to the Premier League and win and win the league. Like the Champions League is completely different for them, because in that time they were really like scooping up so many trophies at the time, where it was like eventually we knew they would win the Champions League. We knew that. It did not take Pep a decade to win a trophy, at City. And yes, I know like Arteta has won a trophy with Arsenal, but I do think that that's becoming very far in the rearview mirror when you start to look at, we're in 2024, that was in 2020. And this particular team has never won anything. And oh, by the way, we're not getting close to winning anything either, beyond, being in the title race. But even the way that we crumbled almost makes it like a non-thing. It wasn't like City were ahead the entire time and we just couldn't catch up to them and we finished within a point. We were ahead of them the whole season. They gave us the whole season, and then we crumbled at the end and then didn't even push them to the final day. So I think all these situations are completely different. And I do feel like the constant comparisons to the likes of Pep and Klopp, although I understand them, they're not the same, because Klopp and Pep came to their respective clubs with pedigree. They are world-class managers before they got to the clubs that they were at, and it did not take them forever to win their first bit of trophies, and they continued to win things or be very close to winning them. Whereas Arteta is finding it difficult to go to deep stages of European competitions as well as domestic cups. And the one time that we got close to winning the Premier League, we bottled it in probably one of the most embarrassing fashions that you can. So it's completely different in my opinion, Kenneth Johnson says he'll be a fool to leave that for Liverpool. Nuances of Fate says Pep won a Champions League in his first season. Let's not do this. Here to there says Pep won about 10 leagues in 13 years. Yeah, it's hard to do the comparison when both managers came in with a lot of pedigree prior to. Arteta's come in with zero pedigree, won one trophy with a team that's not the same team that we have now, and has not really gotten that close to winning anything beyond that. It's too different. It's too different. Dale says difference between Klopp and say Wenger is Klopp is leaving a great team who expect to win, maybe a fall off, but not a Wenger drop off. Potentially, I don't think, I understand what you're saying there. Like Klopp is leaving a good team that could potentially win the league. It's all about whether or not, they can, we'll see how big of an influence Klopp actually is, because I think world-class managers are a big part of the glue. They're much bigger than people give them credit for. You can have the same exact team, but if you don't have the same manager, it can be completely different. So even if you do get, let's say, Xabi Alonso and put him in the same position, can he solve the problems that Klopp solves? Can he, get the club, like the team up the way that Klopp does? Can he solve those problems the way that Klopp does? That's the true measure of a manager. And so, despite the team being very good, you also have to think that in the very near future, you're going to have to replace very quality players that are one of one. Where are you going to find another Salah? Where are you going to find another Allison? We're going to find a Virgil van Dijk. There's a lot of things, a lot of questions in the pipeline that just it's beyond just the fact that like this team looks good right now. But I totally understand what you're saying. Like I don't think Liverpool will go through what we went through. They have a better board, they have a better system, they have a better, front of house, they have a better everything than we did when we allowed Arson to go or we got rid of Arson. So I'm not, anticipating a complete collapse, but I am anticipating the next guy not to be as good as Klopp because there just is they don't exist. Like, it's not going to happen, So we'll see. We'll definitely see. MM says Xabi Alonso is interesting because styles don't match. If you watch Leverkusen, yeah, I mean, styles are different. Klopp is just like his style is something that I don't really see anybody else playing. It's different. Xhaka even said that like the Leverkusen, the way that Xabi Alonso plays is very similar to the way that Arteta plays, and those are two completely different styles. So we'll see. We'll see how these things go. Still says you see Klopp's quality right now with lots of first team players out. Exactly, like it's not that easy. Managers are so pivotal, and I feel like some people feel like, well, the team is good, so things will just run as normal. It's kind of like how I feel about Mikel right now. I feel like even if you like Mikel is getting what he can out of this group. I feel like if you gave this group to Klopp would do a better job. Because the manager is so important. So the same thing can be said in reverse, that even though another manager will come in and have all these great players to their disposal, can they get the same amount out? Can they replicate it? I don't know, because Klopp is very good at getting a lot out of not as much as other teams, and he's also very good at managing. Um, he's really good at managing like keeping the whole squad invested. He's really good at solving problems. So like if they have a player that's out, they can still play their style even though that player is out, even if they're a significant player in their team. He knows what he's doing. Those are so different. He's very, very good. Again, I really rate Klopp a lot, and I'm bitter because he's the manager that I felt like we should have sacked Arson for. Uzu says they ain't got better board. It's probably the same. People underestimate how much Klopp overachieved. How many duds have Liverpool had in terms of signings, like under Klopp? Like I do think that like people underestimate like I'm not saying like that. Obviously, people feel like we have the exact same board because we have the exact same type of owners, but I do feel like Liverpool are well run to a certain extent. Like they're not City, but the signings that they make are a lot more successful than the signings that we make. And I think a lot has to do with the fact that they know who to buy. They've had some duds like Naby Keita. You could say Ox was a dud, but look at all the players that they bought up front. Look at all the players that like the new players that they bought in midfield all look to be clicking and ready to go. They didn't have to spend an arm and a leg to get them. Um, I think that you can have the same type of ownership, but the people underneath that are actually running the club, I feel like they're better than us. Like, and I feel like it's pretty clear. I think it's pretty clear because even when they have players that don't work out, they can move them on. They don't stop them from being able to move in the market. They move quietly in the market. They tend to be able to get deals done that Arsenal could never even think of getting done, like Luis Diaz in January. It's they're they're clear of us in terms of who's actually running the club, not the owners. Winning Way says Diaz looked busy doing nothing half the time. Diaz is quality. Um, Here to there says Liverpool's duds were basically due to injuries like Keita, very good player, Ox the same. Boss J says Klopp's talent ID is world class with very few mistakes, but also remember that if you like I watched a documentary it was on Sadio Mane, But it spoke about how many times Klopp has gotten players that he didn't want. He wanted Mane, but he didn't want Salah. There are players that Liverpool have decided to bring in that Klopp didn't want, but Klopp can get anything out of those players. Like Klopp is not, he doesn't have carte blanche. They have players that they want to bring in, and so they work well together. I'm not saying that Klopp doesn't want any of the players that he has or whatever, but it's very well documented that there are players that were in that Liverpool, that really good Liverpool side that he didn't necessarily want. He wanted other players, different types of players, whatever, but he can still get a lot out of what he has. That's the difference between a good manager and like a special manager is like no matter what the circumstances is, he can figure something out. He's a very good problem solver. So I'm not sure it's like his talent ID, but it's just the fact that whatever he has, whether it's something that he chose or the club chose, he can get a lot out of it, and whatever they do doesn't seem to hamper them from moving forward, where a lot of Arsenal's mistakes tend to pile up in front of the door and then we can't get out, and then we're stuck in a burning building. I don't really see Liverpool having that same thing. you know Nuances of Fate says, I'd argue every Prem club is better than us. Upstairs we're a mess, our scouting is terrible, so Mikel is left with it to his own devices. Mikel also has carte blanche, so there's also, I don't feel like any manager should have carte blanche to just buy whatever type of player they want. I feel like there should be pushback, checks and balances, a very strong technical director that understands what the ethos is and the philosophy around the club is. And if they can get the player that the manager wants because they fit what we're trying to do, then they'll do that. But if it's a player that doesn't fit the philosophy of what we're trying to do, they say, actually, no, that's not what we're going to get you. We're going to get you this and you're going to deal with it. I don't necessarily feel like that's what we have. So yeah. Boss J says, good point, Jess. Klopp is generational. He is. He's very special manager. Like he's that guy. Talk Politics says they move on players just so crying for ESR to be sold. He's going nowhere. I don't know about crying or whatever. I don't even know what you're talking about, to be honest. Juice says, Jess is carte blanche, a synonym for black card, as in have a huge budget. It's like when you can just kind of do what you want, like you ask and you get. I feel like that's kind of how Arteta is treated. And I get that. You want to support the manager with the types of players that he wants. And if you feel like they've earned that trust based on the past, then you'll kind of give them more leash. You know what I mean? Arsenal have never pulled back on Arteta at all, I feel like. And I feel like, the Havertz signing is the biggest indicator of that, because it was documented that like no one really wanted him. The transfer team were not sold on him, and Arteta had to basically convince them that this was the right signing at 65 million pounds and also at that level of wages, and they gave it to him, and it's backfired. So I feel like I want a very strong technical director. I want the club to have an ethos. I want them to have a philosophy. If they can get the manager what he wants, then they will, because it fits the plan. But if it doesn't fit the plan, they're also okay with saying no, and the manager is also okay with working with what they get. You know. So yeah, Boy says, not convinced that Saka is tired. Can't believe he would say he wants to be rested for the next game. Where's that coming from? Drew says, makes sense. Thanks, Jess. Winning Ways says, Klopp needs to finish his career at Bayern or German national team, but I would love to see him at Real Madrid. I think, the German national team are going to really like push to try to get him to be the coach for the World Cup. I read that, which would be nice. I think I don't have any like stock in Germany at all. Obviously, I'm not German. I'm American, whatever. But I don't like seeing traditionally like really good national teams fall off of a cliff. Like it's really difficult to watch international football when you're seeing a poor Germany, a poor Brazil, like and obviously it gives opportunity for, you know, nations that you're not used to seeing be really successful, like Monaco or, Japan or whoever else in the last World Cup that was really, um really like impressive. That's nice, but I kind of like to see the traditional giants do their thing, and it's weird to watch Germany look so shit. um like if they were not the host nation for the Euros, they probably wouldn't have made it. Let's be serious. So it would be kind of cool to see what Klopp could do with, the German team and see if he can get more out of them, whatever. Because I just like to see really good teams like do well. I know that they don't have the same level of quality that they had back in the day. Like they don't have the Ozils and and those types of guys, but definitely what they have now should not be performing to the level that it is. And maybe Klopp is somebody that again can get a lot out of a little, because they got a little. Um, Juice says, Jess, is it true that Mikel got an extension? Why wouldn't they wait until after the season to see if we meet our objectives? We'll talk about that in just a second. I am getting to that point. Dale says, Klopp mentioned quitting for good. Do you think that's possible? I don't know. I don't know. I would hate to see Klopp not do anything ever again, but it's his life. Maybe he's just tired, maybe he can't take it anymore. I think like you should always quit when you're on top and it's by your own, like you're making the decision, you're taking your future into your hands, you're not getting sacked or running around like Jose Mourinho and collecting checks everywhere. If he never came back it would be really sad, but listen, he probably has enough money to just go off and do whatever he wants to do, so it's your life. I'd be sad if that happens, but it's his life. Winning Way says, Jess, you're American. Wait, you don't live in the UK? No, I do not. I live in the US and sometimes I am in the UK. Social Join says, international football is not high quality football. I beg to differ. Like, I do think that like we have to cast our minds back to, maybe 20 years ago. And there were some very good international sides. Like right now, I would say probably the best international side right now is probably either Portugal in terms of how they're performing at the moment and Argentina. But if you think about like just cast your mind back, you had, Argentina that was good, you had Brazil that was good, you had Germany that was good, the Netherlands were better, like everybody was better. And so I do think international football can have quality. Of course, it's not the same as club football because you have to all come together and play with each other every once in a while and then go back off to your clubs. But international football has vastly fallen off, and I'm not quite sure why. Yeah, France is always good. Yes, France, exactly, them too. Naz AFC says Klopp to Arsenal, here we go, would be the dream. Should have did it in 2015, missed the chance. We were begging for that, and everybody wanted Arsene to stay. And here's my thing, and like this kind of leads me into the Mikel Arteta conversation, is that moving on is not a big deal when it's proactive. When it's reactive, it's probably because you should have done it before and you didn't, and now you've lost something or you've fallen off or whatever. And with Mikel, I don't necessarily feel like it's obvious that we should move on from him, but I also feel like once it is obvious, what will we have lost? It's just not that big of a deal to me. I personally don't feel like whatever we're doing right now, whatever project or process that we're in right now, should be based upon Mikel Arteta. It should be based on what we want to do as a club. And if Mikel can deliver that, then good. If he cannot deliver that, then we find somebody that can. Right now, the project is very heavily weighted towards Mikel, his talent level, and how he develops. To me, that is very dangerous because to me, I'd rather lose Mikel than lose the players. And what I mean by that is how many players will we lose in the process while waiting for Mikel to become a world-class manager? What if he never becomes a world-class manager? What if he just stops at the good level? What if he's somebody that doesn't need to be managing at the top level, meaning like an elite club, you know? And I don't necessarily feel like we have a definitive answer whether or not Mikel Arteta is what kind of manager he's going to be because he's in the infancy of his career. We don't know. A lot of Arsenal fans feel like they don't want to let Mikel go because if he, becomes world class or generational manager, then we will have lost out on him. And then there's the other side of the fan base that feels like it's already obvious that he's not that guy because in 4 years he hasn't been able to deliver major trophies, and even this season it doesn't look like he's going to be able to deliver that. And so it's it's weird because the fans are talking about these things, but is the club talking about these things? My feeling deep down is that the club is very, very comfortable with Mikel because he fits the what the club want in terms of like the Cronky style manager, a young manager that they're going to give a lot of resources to, that develops while they're trying to build something, and then hopefully they get the big trophy at some point. Now, American sports are so different than, football, European football, so different. I don't know if you can apply the same thing, but I do think we're getting to the point with Mikel where these contract extensions, the rumored contract extension that has already happened or is about to happen, but is most certainly going to happen, these contract extensions are starting to look more and more funny in the light, because are you giving a contract extension because of the success that this person is bringing? Did he earn it? Does he deserve it? Or is it just a business thing, to make sure that you maintain his value and that, you don't lose him? Or is it you guys are actually happy with what Mikel is doing and you're perfectly fine with giving him more money and giving him more time because what they want to do is what they're doing right now, which is making sure they're in Champions League? Either one of those can be true. I don't know which one is true. But for me personally, I feel like at some stage, these contract extensions have got to be based on whether or not we're hitting our targets. Now, what are our targets? What are our targets? Do you guys think that our target going into this season was to win the league? I don't think so. I think our target this season was to maintain our level as a Champions League club, because last season, our goal was not to be in a title race. I feel like being in that title race actually was too far for the club. They weren't anticipating being in a title race. They didn't build to be in a title race. And so we ended up being in one. We crashed out terribly. And then this season, it's like I don't get the feeling that we're everything that we do, it's like we stumble upon being in a better position than we anticipated being in, which sheds a very bright light on what our actual expectations were. When we could have finished in the top 4, the whole thing that was coming out from the club and the players was that they just wanted to get back into Europe. So last season, it was definitely to get into the Champions League. Do I believe that this season the goal was to win the league? No, I think it was to maintain your Champions League spot, go into the Champions League and do whatever. I don't get the feeling that they want, like, that they were desperate to win the league. The club doesn't talk about it. The players don't talk about it. Everybody's very covert and very close to the chest. It's very we want to develop, we want to compete, we want to be near, we want to, do as good as we can, but it's never we're desperate to win trophies. We know we need to win the Premier League, blah blah blah. It's never that, you know? And I wonder if they're covert with it because they don't want the fans to know what they expect to do, because if they miss out on it, then it looks bad. Now, should Mikel be getting this contract extension? If they announced it tomorrow, I would feel some type of way about it. Not because I think Mikel is a terrible manager or because we're not doing okay or he hasn't helped us, turn the club around and, improve, but because I personally feel like we're getting to the point where either he needs to start delivering or he needs to maybe be moved on and we can move into a different direction. And so getting him a new contract when he hasn't really succeeded in anything or had any sort of tangible success. I'm hearing people talk about, our commercial deals and how valuable our squad is, and that stuff is great, but you can't put that in your trophy cabinet. I don't want to be Spurs. Talking about how much money you make and how valuable your squad is and how you are in the Champions League is a very Spursy thing to talk about. We're not talking about trophies anymore. And we're very quick to dismiss winning trophies as an indication of success as Arsenal fans. And I'm not sure why that is. So I do feel some type of way about Arteta, potentially getting this new contract, which is said to be only not it's only set to be announced. That's all that's left. What are we continuously giving him these contracts for? What is the remit? What is he supposed to be achieving in these seasons? Is it just be in and around the Champions League? Because if that's the case, then that's nonsense, and it's hard to know because I don't know what the club is thinking. I'm not in those rooms, but the way that we move doesn't it's not like a team that wants to win shit. It's like we're okay to kind of be where we're at. You know, we're not going to fight for the domestic cups. We're going to throw them away, basically bomb out of them because we're too good for that. But we're too good for domestic cups and Europa League, but we're also not willing to really push and be desperate to win the Premier League. That don't sit right with me. I think I'm getting a little bit tired of what we're about right now. And that might just be because like we're not in the domestic cups. I'm salty about it. We haven't played in the Champions League in a while. And maybe I just have to wait till February 21st and I'll feel better. But I'm not loving us right now, and so I'm wondering why we're giving him this new contract because it cannot be based on success because we have not gotten there. All we've really done is turn over the club, which is great, and improve, but that's not enough. We should be winning shit. Blaze has a question, says, Jess, do you think the Cronkies are trying to do with Arteta the same thing they do with the Denver Nuggets and the Rams? Do you think it will work with Arsenal? Um, I mean, it's just so different, and I think that like the way that they do things is like build up to this one win, and then when they win it's like great, and then like it's sustained success. I'm not sure is something that we can do with the way that the Cronkies operate because they seem like they build up to one big thing and then because it doesn't there is no Champions League, there is no none of this. Like every year it's different, and you just I don't know. I don't know if I feel like the Cronkies truly get that like we cannot just be in the Champions League. It's not a trophy. You can't just build up to one trophy and then fall away. We have to figure out a way to beat City. And you can't do that the way that we're doing shit right now. So um I don't know if it'll work. I don't even know what they're thinking. I don't. Um it's a weird one. It really is. Winning Way says, would you lot take Pickford as a backup keeper or push Raya when Ramsdale leaves? No. Hellman says, would us getting a new manager when Klopp is also leaving not be a mistake? That's a really, really good question. Because I do have this sense that like people are like, well, now that Klopp is leaving, we really have to stick with Arteta. And I'm like, okay, I can see that because I've seen people kind of like, okay, we're just once Pep and Klopp leave, then all of a sudden Arteta is going to be top dog. I don't know if I agree with it, but I understand the thought process that once those two leave, then there'll be a much better chance that the likes of Arteta or Ten Hag or whoever could actually win the Premier League and will be quote unquote ready. Now, my problem with this way of thinking is that one, we don't know when Pep is going to leave because Pep is psychotic. We don't know when Pep is going to leave. He's a psychopath. He could literally stay there and be in a wheelchair and barely able to freaking talk and could probably still win the Premier League because everything is like a freaking machine over there. So I don't know if that's the right way of thinking, but listen, what will we lose in the next 3 or 4 years waiting on Pep to freaking go? Let's say 2 years, because trust and believe, if we don't win anything this season, next season, or this coming summer, I would not be surprised if some of our other clubs around us start to look at our players or even clubs abroad, because it only takes a couple of seasons for a player to start to think that this is not the place where they can win shit. And I know that like some of our players have signed new deals, but signing new deals for them is the same thing as signing new deals for the club. It's business as usual. You can still move clubs. It doesn't mean that you're committed long term. So I worry about the Thakas and the Martinellis and the Salibas and these guys because in the next 2 years, if we don't win anything, even if we are like, okay, now Pep is gone, they may be gone, you know? And so sometimes it is about the now. And as Arsenal never really focus on the now. They focus on the future so much. And when it gets to the point where we could start focusing on the future, we always mess it up and then end up losing our best players because we didn't win in that 1 or 2 year period where we really needed to. Now, what could stop them from leaving is even just winning a couple of domestic cups and getting to a couple of finals from now into the time that Pep goes. But we can't even get to the semifinals or to the latter stages of these domestic cups because Arteta doesn't manage them well. We're not even there yet. We're not like once Saka and these guys, like they've never even really been in a final, you know? They haven't even gone to Wembley really, you know? So I think I don't really want to lose these players hoping that Pep leaves and then we're in this perfect position, these perfect settings that Arteta or like Arsenal are kind of looking for in order to strike. We're going to lose players in the process because it's not perfect. Planning football out is not perfect. It doesn't work on a spreadsheet. You need to hit while you can. And really, last season was such a good point. Like it was such a good opportunity to win the league and we didn't do it. We didn't do it. And so I feel like that could end up costing us in the future because waiting on Pep to leave to try to win shit is just nonsense. It just is, so and again, the this this whole project cannot be about Mikel. It cannot. It cannot. Because what if he ends up just being an average manager? Then what? We will have wasted all this time. Arsenal are really banking on this being a part of the Pep tree and all this Juga de position and all this and him being young and being able to talk a good game. But the results speak for itself. He's a good coach, but he has a lot to learn. And I don't know if he can learn that shit in 2 years. I really don't. Um, Boy says the board probably think Arteta can fetch the odd cup here and there, though, even if things have been pear-shaped since the season he took over from Emery. Yeah, you can think that. I would imagine I was hoping that we'd be able to continue to win these cups, but we don't even get close. We don't even get close. Like, that's what's really shocking to me is that even when Klopp wasn't winning these domestic cups, he was getting to hella finals. Champions League finals, domestic cup finals. He sometimes didn't win them, but that's credit in the bank that like, okay, the next time we get to a final, we'll win it. We don't even have that because we can't even get beyond the early stages, So yeah, you can bet that Arteta could win a couple, but right now, the last 4 years haven't really shown me that he has that capability. It's about managing the squad and getting us into the next round. I just feel like most of the times we just kind of throw the domestic cup, putting in a really rotated lineup of guys that either are not good enough or have no confidence because they don't ever play. We go out of the domestic cups early, even when other teams are basically begging us to take them out of the competition. We still find a way to not go through. And then we get into the league and we still miss our target or whatever target was there. Arsenal had a really good opportunity to finish in the top 4 before time. We couldn't do it. We had a very good opportunity to win the Premier League before the expected time, and we couldn't do it. It's just like we can't capitalize. And to me, that's the manager. Um, Nujit, New Taman says Klopp is gone, so at least we know Martinelli will stay. Thank God. Thank God. Says when Bellingham calls Saka and Mbappe calls Saliba, I might hate football. It's coming. It's coming, and I just don't really feel like players are just not that loyal. And we shouldn't expect them to be because clubs are not loyal to them, So if in the next 2 seasons, even like this season, if we don't win anything, they're gone. Like they're gone, and we'll be still waiting on Mikel. And right now, he looks very hard headed. He's not somebody that I think learns quickly. He tends to double down and triple down until things are completely broken, and then he tries something new. And so, how long is it going to take for him to learn how to do these things? Chosen One says, yeah, Jess, if Arsenal don't start winning trophies, those other big clubs are going to be ready to offer them deals. And if Madrid comes for Saka or Saliba, do they say no? Only if Arsenal win a lot. Exactly. Like it's just I I'm un I'm unconvinced by what we're doing right now. I don't like things could go in one of two directions. They could go where everything goes perfect, like it is on the plan, where in the next 2 seasons, we win shit and Saka and Saliba and Martinelli don't go and everything is fine. Or it could go the other way. And the other way is not what I want to see. Foxy says Saka will never play for Real Madrid, not the required level. Fair enough. He won't go there. He'll go Bayern. He'll go Manchester City. He'll go somewhere else. Like, Saka's a very good player. It's just nonsense that he cannot play at any of these top clubs or he couldn't play for Real Madrid. But go ahead, cook, whatever. Maybe then he'll stay here with us. Don't care. Here to there says Arteta already tried to discard Big Gabriel and Nelly. I wouldn't blame them for trying to move. When did he try to get rid of Martinelli? Gabriel, I don't think he likes as much, I'll be honest with you, but Martinelli, has he tried to get rid of him? I think he's definitely tried to buy players to play in his position. So, but when did he try to get rid of Martinelli? Saida says, in a way, it's kind of a blessing and a curse that Josh is in charge. He seems more willing to spend, but he isn't as ambitious as Stan. And I think that's a really good point that I would love for there to be more pressure on Mikel. Not because I want to see him fail, but because I feel like even just feeling like you could potentially be in trouble makes you make better decisions sometimes, and it forces you to want to do things now and stop waiting. It's kind of like when I don't know, like when you don't have money, you tend to like work harder and be more desperate because you're like, shit, that bill is due, you know? But when you have the money, you take your time, whatever, you do whatever because you got it, you're fine. I feel like Arteta needs to be he needs to feel to be more desperate, and I don't feel like there's a desperation. I feel like there's this very almost like arrogant aloofness to everybody at the club that we'll get there, we'll be fine, it's okay, we got our plan. And while we're doing our plan, everybody else is catching us up. Next season, I feel like it might be the season where everybody, not everybody, but Spurs will probably be better. Chelsea will be better. Man City will still be Man City. Liverpool will probably still be Liverpool. And the more teams that are fighting for those Champions League spots and it's going to be harder for Arsenal to do their thing if they don't figure out a way to get their head above water. And when you do things like you did last summer, I don't know if you're actually as desperate as you need to be. Because this season, we should have created a gap between us and the rest. It should just be us and like one other team maybe up in front of the pack. But we're right there with everybody else. And I don't particularly think we're any better than anybody else. If I'm honest with you, I haven't seen enough from Arsenal this season to say, okay, well, all we need to do is just get Thomas Partey back. And all of a sudden, we're going to be that much better than Spurs, that much better than Villa, that much better than Liverpool. I think we're kind of right there with everybody else. We haven't gotten better this season. I feel like we should have been more desperate to create that gap. And that desperation would have made you not buy Kai Havertz. A desperate manager that's desperate to win does not do that. Somebody who has no pressure on them, that feels like the plan is fine and we're just going to go about our plan and with our speed and all this kind of stuff, buys Kai Havertz. No desperate manager does that. Not one, Here to there says, agreed, United will improve next year. Arteta has to reinvent himself or he will be barely in the top 6 next year. Social Join says, we will get Arteta out of here. Listen, once the stadium starts booing and saying Arteta out, it's over for him. He'll be down to the fans in AFTV again. If we finish behind Emery or Ange, maybe it'll start to get a little bit more, Aegon says, look at the statistics. We are better, but that doesn't suit your agenda. I don't have an agenda. Anybody who's listening to me right now that thinks I have an agenda is only hearing what they want to hear. They just want to hear that we're better than everybody. Arteta is amazing. Everybody's great. We're fine. That's just not the reality. Like, the table doesn't lie. It doesn't. The statistics, the underlying metrics, I've seen those. XG against, we're right up there with City, our XG, over the last 10 so games, we're creating enough chances, but we're still sitting third. We've still conceded more goals at this stage than we did last season. We're still not scoring enough goals. My eyes are not, they're not, the eyes test does not lie sometimes, you guys. We're not better than we were last season. We're just not. We're not better than we were last season, and we're not significantly better than anybody else in the top 4. We are right in the mix. We're not better than anyone else. Not right now. So I don't care what the underlying metrics say. The table doesn't lie. What we're watching doesn't lie. We have not gotten better. We've either stayed the same or gotten worse. It's literally not an agenda. I just feel like people don't like when anybody says anything that's not overtly positive, because anything that's not overtly positive is negative and agenda. It's not. We don't know whether or not what direction we're going to go in. We can either go this way or we can go this way or stay the same. I don't know what it is, but because I'm unconvinced, I'm worried that if it does go the other direction, we will have wasted some of this time. You know what I mean? So it's not agenda. I want Arteta to show that he's the guy. I would rather us not have to start over, you know? But has he shown us that he is? No. And anybody that's saying that he has is, I don't know, because for me, it's like the only way to know if Arteta's that guy is if he's overperforming expectations, if he's winning trophies, and he's not doing any of that. I don't feel like he's overperforming, and he's definitely not winning trophies. So it's not an agenda. I want Arteta to work out. I'm not going to blow smoke up a manager's butt that I don't feel like is doing as good as people are saying, you know? Boss J says, sheesh, this generation of Arsenal fans really haven't seen us win anything, which is why they see Arteta as our savior. They haven't seen any better than what we have 100. The one thing is that when you have a title winning team or a team that you feel like is going to win, it feels like it. It's not a surprise. It's not oh my gosh, I can't believe it. It doesn't feel like it does this season. Like whenever we've won the league, and I've watched Arsenal win a league title before and win trophies before, you felt like you were going to win it. At this stage in the season, you're like, we're going to win that shit, you know? Um, there hasn't been a moment this season where I felt like we were going to win it. You know what a title winning team feels like. They're inevitable. They score loads of goals. The mentality is there. The energy is there. We have not once this season looked or felt like a title winning team. Now, we could show up against Nottingham Forest and all of a sudden we look different, but I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. You know, last season it did feel like it, but we still found a way to trip ourselves up. We still found a way to kill our best opportunity in like a decade to win the league. So last season we definitely felt like it. This season, does it feel like we're gonna win the league? Sometimes we have to stop going with this shit and stop always thinking from the spreadsheet and just say, how do you feel? When you watch us, do you feel like you're watching a title winning team? Do you feel like you're watching a team that believes that they can win the title? Do you believe Arteta is a generational manager? You know what I mean? What do you actually think? What do you actually feel? Not the statistics. Like, I don't know. But I do agree that I feel like some people that have maybe never seen us win a title are thinking more from the spreadsheet and what they see on Twitter, and certain people that spread some certain narratives because they don't know what they don't know, you know? This team does not feel like a title winning team right at this moment. They don't. But they can change it around. They can change it around. I just don't know if they will. Lucas says with Liverpool, it felt like it was coming. They were building that winning mentality and getting better every year. Aha says, hey Jess, would you take Dewsbury Hall? Good player, but would he push to be a starter for Arsenal right away? Not sure. We can aim for better. Um, um, I mean, I like him, and like if we brought him in, I wouldn't be devastated, but I still feel like, Arsenal need to be looking a little bit higher than that. Like we should be trying to bring in world class potential players or players that are already world class. Um, excuse me, not players that are good and will go to Brighton and maybe get to a top 6 club in a year or so. Um, I don't feel like that's what we should be doing. Um, but he's a good player, you know. Here to there says facts. Just these last 2 years were golden opportunities for us, and we are blowing it. Boy says, why can Klopp play some youth and develop him when he's not going to reap the fruits of developing that youth? Kwanzaa is making mistakes on Klopp's watch. The Bobby Clark making mistakes under Klopp. It's I feel like the thing is like with the youth conversation is people you say like, well, Arteta could bring in some of the youth and develop them and use them. And what people will say back to you is, oh, so you think we need to be starting the youth? Oh, well, what are they going to do for us? Arsenal fans just are so delusional. And it's like, no, I don't feel like that's what people are saying. I feel like people are saying that it, like, if Arteta wanted to, he could probably dip into the academy and find some solutions, but he doesn't. And the idea that if you use an academy player, it'll crumble the entire thing doesn't really feel like the truth when you look around the entire Premier League, whether it's Man City or down at the bottom, and all of them are integrating youth into their team, whether they're starting or playing bit part roles, it doesn't matter. The fact that Arteta has not brought a single one of them through, Saka and Emile Smith Rowe do not count because they were already there, is strange, but it's not the end of the world. But anytime you bring it up, it's like, oh my gosh, you guys want all these, you want Ethan Nwaneri to win us the Premier League? No, that's not what they're saying. They just are saying that why can't they even get a fucking minute? You know what I mean? Why can't they get a minute? Like that's what people are saying. But it's just weird that like uh some people will literally like just go with the narrative, and it is what it is. Um I know I don't see somebody in this chat. I know I don't. I know I don't. Here to there says all elite managers develop youth, have to max out the resources to reach the top level. Jagoon says DG looking for smoke. Why are you here? Why are you here? Why are you in my stream causing problems? No, I'm just joking. The McChronicle says she is, and I'm starting to watch her now. Says a lot, doesn't it? Politics, Talk Politics says Jess is becoming Lee Gunner. Fair enough, you know what I said? I said this the other day too, is that I said anytime you say anything about the manager that's not like overtly positive, you get called Lee Gunner. So that's that's exactly what it is. It's anytime you say anything, you're Lee Gunner. Anything. It's so funny. Like it's almost like clockwork. But I don't get rattled by being called Lee Gunner because I know what I'm actually saying. And I feel like a lot of times people say things like that because they know that what you're saying is true, or they know that a little bit of it is true and they just don't want to admit it. So instead of just saying, you know what, I can hear what you're saying. You're probably making some points. I maybe don't fully agree with you, but I can see your points. They call you Lee Gunner or toxic negative, or the reason why the club is doing bad. AFTV. Blah blah blah. It is what it is. I really don't. It is what it is. If you think I'm Lee Gunner, you think I'm Lee Gunner. Saida says Josh seems to really love Arteta, so I don't see him leaving soon. Edu leaving would benefit the club better for the long run. Also, a better sporting director would put pressure on Arteta. How do you guys feel about that? Do you guys think that Edu's doing a good job? What would you give him a grade wise? Like if you had to from Edu just getting here to now, what would you give him as a grade? An A, a B, a C, a D? Is he failing? How do you guys feel about Edu? Do you feel like the bigger problem is maybe Edu is not strong enough with Arteta, or he's not, leading the recruitment as good as he can? Or do you feel like the manager is actually a bigger problem, or is it both? It'd be interesting to know what people are thinking because, again, if you say that Edu's probably not doing as good as you expect him to, but he's not terrible, you get called Lee Gunner. So, but not here, not on my streams, not on my stream. Let's see. Lucas says C minus, but we don't know exactly what he does. It's hard to know because there's no transparency really, because we're not there. So we don't know whose signings are whose, if they really do agree on all signings. Like we don't really know. Here to there says, I don't know if we can blame Edu because Arteta has so much power. I do know that we need a new structure. Let's see. Talk Politics says, no, it is not true. What you feel or think isn't necessarily the truth. Yeah, and what you think is not necessarily the truth either. So we all have opinions. And the thing about this fan base is that they don't like a difference of opinion. They like an echo chamber. They're really desperate to make sure that everybody's singing from the same hymn sheet, because if we start saying anything negative about the club or the manager, what they're afraid of is that one, rivals will cotton on to it and start using it against us. And two, they don't want to go back into Wenger out. So instead of actually being okay with genuine discourse and not just calling everybody that says anything negative, toxic or Lee Gunner. Instead of allowing that discourse to happen, they try to shut it down immediately, call you Lee Gunner or whatever, try to get your channel shut down, try to get people not to listen to you. But it doesn't work, because eventually when people start coming around, they start telling the truth on how they actually feel. So we all have difference of opinions. You're not right. I'm not right. It's an opinion. But the thing is when you start to try to shut down certain opinions or start calling people Lee Gunner because maybe they're not as behind the manager as you are, I feel like you actually agree with some of the things I'm saying, but you just don't want it out there. So it's just weird. Like there's nobody weirder than the Arsenal fan base. No one. No one is stranger than the Arsenal fan base. It's you can say anything. Like, if you think that anything that I've said today is toxic or overtly negative, you didn't listen, because I've said multiple times that I would love for Arteta to be the guy, because I don't want to start over. I would love for him to be the guy. But I'm also not going to be gaslit into thinking that we know for sure that he is, because he hasn't won enough, you know? So I just, I don't know. I've seen so many people say that, like, over the last couple of weeks, that certain people are toxic or blah, blah, blah. And sometimes the delivery is not great or whatever. But listen, until we start winning things for real, really pushing City to the end of title races, getting into finals, bringing home silverware, you can't really blame people for being upset, because the whole point of sport is to win. So if you're not winning, showing me a spreadsheet of how much money we're making and how valuable the squad is nothing. Like, it's not anything, you know? So I'm chill about it all. Anybody that really watches me and that watches the content mostly knows that at the end of the day, I just want Arsenal to do well. And that if Arteta's not the guy, then Arteta's not the guy. And if you think Arteta's the guy no matter what, then you can go with him if he leaves. It's not Arteta FC. Chosen One says Jess is not just not related to Arteta, but do you think Mo leaving Liverpool is a bigger possibility now that Klopp is leaving the club? I think he was going either way. Like, I think he's going whether Klopp stays or not. And I think Liverpool will be looking for somebody to come in. But yeah, I think it's not that it's been well documented or put into stone, but I do think Salah is going to leave no matter what this summer, whether Klopp stays or not. So yeah. Issa says some fans don't actually care about winning, as long as the facade of winning and being a big club can be achieved by being in and amongst City, Liverpool, top of the table, they'll happily accept. I kind of agree with that. Nuances of Fate says Arsenal fan base is straight up weird. I've stopped trying to have honest discourse. I will always try to at least facilitate honest discourse on whatever channel I have or wherever I'm at, but there's no one stranger than the Arsenal fan base. They just, I don't know. Yeah. Magambo says, I only care about the manager delivering the result and the owners providing the meaning or the means. Edu's role isn't that important. I think Edu's role is incredibly important, because he's the one that, even if he does give Arteta everybody that he wants, he has to be able to negotiate those deals down, because Edu's role is super important, because the Cronkies are who they are. That we're not backed by a nation state. So there's not going to be multiple opportunities for us to, buy a 50 million pound fullback, it not work out, by another one, and not work out, by another one, and not work by another one. Edu's responsibility is to make sure that he can build the squad based on the club's philosophy and ethos, hopefully, and not just Arteta's, but do it in a way that, him and Richard Garlick and like Lewis, whatever his name is, all of those people working together to make sure that the numbers make sense, that we're not putting ourselves into a situation like we are this January window where we can't move. We can't actually improve the squad. He has to be able to sell players. He's the one that's actually building the teams, like not only Arsenal, the men's team, but Arsenal women as well. And so his role is incredibly important, because we're not backed by a nation state, and we cannot just continue to buy in the same position over and over again, not recruit fees, make the mistake over and over again. He's a big part of it. So yeah, he's front and center of everything Arsenal. Whenever we're at awards, whenever we're doing anything, whenever, they show new signings, he's front and center, because he is important. whether or not he's like, I think his role, I think we should have maxed out that role as much as possible. I don't think it needs to be an Arsenal man. If it is, that's great. But I don't think that that is more important than how good the person is in the job. And that's why when Luis Campos was available, I was like, we should actually be going after him. If Edu needs to step aside, then he needs to step aside. But if you max out that position and you get the best possible person that you can on the market in that position, and they can get you deals for players, they can identify talent, they have connections in certain markets, and they can, you know, work in those markets and bring in players for smaller fees and things like that, that can really help you, especially for a team like Arsenal that, again, are not backed by a nation state. But Edu seems to spend the max amount on a player, cannot get a deal, doesn't sell players very well. We're in situations where we can't move in the market because we can't sell or we won't sell. Like, Edu's job is very important. And that's why, like, I just am like, okay, well, could we have not gotten somebody better or what? Like, does it have to be Edu? But Arsenal like to hire from within, and they like people that have played for the club before. That minimizes the amount of options that you have. And so Edu might be the best possible technical director that's played for Arsenal, but that doesn't mean that he's the best on the market that you can get. And so I like Edu, and I think he's done good things, just like I feel like Arteta's done good things, but that doesn't necessarily mean that those are the best options that we could have without me being able to really pick out people in the market that we can get. We know that there are people that have went to other clubs that do this job or do these jobs and do a better job. We know that. We've seen it. Edu's good, but I don't think he's amazing. Nuances of Fate says Edu needs to be an adult in the room and he should tell baby I'm not baby Arteta, I'm dying. No, you can't have that. You have to pass exams instead. He's spoiled money, wasting brat on his on his hands because he can't say no. Nah, I'm sorry, that killed me. Not baby Arteta. That's funny. But I would, without really being able to see what's going on behind the scenes, I want a strong technical director that knows how the club should be built, whether it does, and it doesn't have that much to do with the manager. Now, I remember when we first hired Emery and they went from the Arsene model, which Arsene was in charge of everything. He was very involved with everything. He was the club. It was Arsene's Arsenal. It was his thing. We went from that extreme to the complete other extreme where you had Raul and his people running the club, and Emery had no say in what was going on, and he was just a coach. It's very difficult, I think, to find a good balance in between because somebody's going to want more power. Either the coach is going to want a little bit more power, technical director. It's very hard to find that synergy. And that's why I think, like, when you look at Liverpool, they haven't gotten everything right, but they've figured out a way to get Klopp what he needs. Klopp figured out a way to be able to get the most out of what he's been given. He still gets some of the things he wants, sometimes he doesn't, but it feels like the synergy was always together. Where with Arsenal, they seem like the only way that they can operate is if the manager is the face of the club and is doing everything and is very heavily involved. I don't like that, but I'm not running it, so they just have to hope that Arteta knows what he's doing, because they're putting a lot of trust and resources and investment into the manager, where I feel like I wish that they would put more of that time and effort and investment into the scouts and, the team and, whatever. So, yeah. Big Smoke says, keep the Epstein files and give me the Havertz files. Okay. Thank you so much for your super chat. I really appreciate that. I'm not 100% sure what that means. If you can explain to me what that means, that'd be great. But and I feel like it's something funny, so I'm gonna laugh anyway. Hopefully it's not anything too bad. Chris Fraser says, having a novice sporting director at the same time as having a novice manager is a big problem in my opinion. One of those needed to be experienced in order to do a proper rebuild. I kind of agree with that as well. Netweed says the Klopp bombshell. Wow, now that's news. Will be so interesting to see how Liverpool react to this. Can they replace him ever? In other news, our trophy cabinet drought continues. Yeah, and that's the biggest one. That's the biggest thing. That's the biggest thing. Mr. Happy says Arteta is dumb, to be honest, completely kills the value of French players. MR says hi from North Africa, Mediterranean Sea, Algeria. I like football and Liverpool. It's to the championship. So you're saying Liverpool are going to win. Fair enough. Boss J says the mystery of Havertz files really does need to be unraveled. Yes, it does. I want to know why Gabrielle was dropped for real. I want to know what they were thinking with Havertz for real. I wish I could be a part of the conversation. I wish I was there when Arteta was like, I want to sign Havertz, and everybody was like, huh? You know? I wish I had been there because I was like, that's probably a really funny conversation. And what Arteta said to convince them, to convince them that Havertz was the right signing. You know, the McChronicle says, all I'll say on Klopp, pray for Chelsea in that League Cup final for Klopp. Liverpool gonna absolutely spank Chelsea. I agree. Um, I agree. I think this could, like, some people are saying that it'll crumble them because there'll be less motivation for Liverpool now that they know the manager is going, but I actually think it'll work in the opposite for them because they love to have something to be geeked up about. All Klopp has to do is get into a fight with somebody on the sideline, whether it's justified or not, and they start barking like rabid dogs with foam coming out of their mouth, you know? So it doesn't take much to get the Liverpool faithful ready to go. And so I think going to Anfield from now until the end of the season could be very, very problematic. I'm glad we don't have to go there again. But yeah, it could galvanize them. Let's see how things go. Edu's barbecued guest says, imagine if Arteta continues to spend more than any other Premier League manager and making top four is all that matters. What type of message does that send about the club? I don't really know. I don't know what the plan is for Arsenal behind the scenes, but it seems like whatever process or project that we're in, it's a very slow one and doesn't really account for opportunities where we could accelerate things or win things in real time. It feels like it's all based on like this future. I'm hope this plan is not a 10-year plan, you know, because I was thinking it was a 5-year plan where like in this season they were like, we're gonna win it. You know, this is well, Arteta's four and a half season. You know, so maybe it's next season, but it cannot be like a 10-year plan where they're waiting on Klopp and Pep to go so that Arteta can actually truly compete with them. Like it cannot be that. It cannot be that. And there has to be more pressure on him to do better in domestic cups. There has to be more pressure on him to deliver silverware. There has to be more pressure on him to go further in competitions. Like it just feels like everything is okay. It's fine. You know, it's okay that we went out of the Carabao Cup early. It's okay that Liverpool were trying to go out of the FA Cup and we still found a way not to go through. It's okay that we bottled the league the way that we did. It's okay to continue to go out of European competitions the way that we do. It's fine. And that's what it feels like. But I think that's also because Arsenal are very opaque with their plans. Like they don't say they're not like we're desperate to win by this time, like we're going to win this by now, like we know that the club needs to win trophies and so we're desperate to win them now. Their actions and what they say don't match up to we're desperate to win now. It's all very much like we just want to compete, we want to be in and around, we know the competition is stiff but we like to be right in, we want to improve. It's like, when do you guys expect to win, you know? Dale says, I think the plan was to start from the back and move forward, defense, midfield, offense, but they effed up the midfield. And that's the thing. When you F it up, then you have to redo it and then it slows everything down. If the plan was to rebuild the midfield this past summer, they got it wrong. They got it wrong. And I think you could have slowly, I don't think it should have, because it took us a while to get the defense going because we had to buy Pablo Marie and Cedric and fail. And then we had David Luiz and then we had to get rid of him. And then we had Gabrielle and then we had to bring Saliba back after 2 years. And, you know, we bought left back 4 or 5 times. You know, it's taken us a while to get the defense going. All we needed to do was just not buy Havertz and actually buy either an attacker or a midfielder. I just feel like they've made it very difficult. Like, I don't feel like it needed to be this hard. Like, you could have taken that 65 million, split it in half, and could have solved our midfield and attacking problems, or at least improved them. But I don't know what I don't know what they were doing. I don't, because now we're gonna have to redo midfield again, and that's inevitably gonna hurt our ability to do something further forward. Because you know, if they have to choose between getting a winger or another defender, you know what they're gonna get. So yeah, it's interesting. I hope that the plan is to win sooner rather than later. Civil Wonder says, no one thinks it's okay. Such an odd way to rationalize your distrust. I mean, do they look like they're desperate to win to you guys? Like, I don't think so, but I'm 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 allowed to distrust things because there's nothing to trust yet. Like, until they start winning trophies or at least getting in and around trophies, meaning getting to finals and being very competitive and stuff like that. I don't think that it's it's not trusting it fully is a bad thing. And so you saying nobody thinks it's okay is all good and well and fine, but none of us actually know what the plan is. It could be a 10-year plan, it could be a 5-year plan. They can actually be okay with just finishing in top 4. Would that be out of the realm of possibility? We know what the club is usually about. Under the Cronkies, we've always kind of been okay with being in the top 4. So until that changes, I am valid in my distrust. And nobody can gaslight me into thinking otherwise, because there's nothing. If you give somebody unlimited resources and tons of time, you can get a young team into the top 4. It's not like this great, it's not an amazing achievement. We could have done it a year prior, So I guess I'm just not as impressed by finishing in the top 4, missing out on a trophy like that. I'm not, so my distrust is valid. Like, I think people want you to think that this is okay or this is fine or, everything is just going to work out. I don't think it's as clear as that. But that's because they haven't really given me much to say like, oh yeah, this is the way that we should be going. Because again, there's been no tangible success beyond the first trophy that Arteta won in his first season with a different team. So um, it's just, I feel like I'm valid. Like, and I will always feel that my opinion is valid. I don't really care what other people think in terms of people feeling like going down this alley is going to lead to success. I'm a little bit more like, let me just wait a little bit and see if I actually want to go down that road with you guys. I don't know what to tell y'all. Um, maybe it's because I've actually seen Arsenal win things before, so I don't actually feel as gun ho about what we've been doing because it's not as impressive as it is to other people. Some people were very impressed with last season because that's the best team that they've ever seen play for Arsenal. I get that. That last year's team was probably the most fun and the most excitement that a lot of Arsenal fans have had. So I understand why they're like, how could you not trust that? Because we didn't win. I don't know what to tell you. So, Chris Fraser said they've made a lot of novice mistakes because they're novices. It's that simple for me. The McChronicle says Arsenal women won a trophy and made the UCL semi even with all their injuries. They ain't a part of this. Here to there says with all of the evidence, anyone with blind faith in Arteta has no urgency to win. I'm just saying it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay to kind of look around and say, okay, is this what we should be doing? Some people feel like blind faith and just, yeah, well, of course we're doing the right things. That's if you want to feel that way. I feel like my opinion is valid. So I'm going to keep saying it no matter how much you guys don't like it. Like, it just is what it is. It's like I don't go on other people's channels and, get upset with them for their opinions or anything like that because they're kind of allowed to have that opinion. Like, I'm not going to go on Northside or Lee's channel and be like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you're saying that." Like, I think they're valid in the way that they feel. I don't agree with it, but until we start winning, it's really hard to say that Lee and these guys are wrong because in the end of the day, sport is about winning. That's all it is. Kamani says Arsenal are not desperate to win. 100% my skepticism comes from the attitude I've seen for decades. This is true. It's hard to turn it around when for decades, they haven't really done anything to win consistently, you know. Um, so until that happens, a lot of people are going to be distrustful. Even though we have done, like, I feel like people are still not hearing that, like, we have improved. Like, we've improved. He's turned the team around. Edu's done good work. But that, to me, that doesn't translate into, yeah, for sure, we're going to win major trophies. Like, until I see it, you know, for me, a lot of trust was broken last season. I was very disappointed in the way that things happened last season. And I don't necessarily feel like that's the only outcome that we could have had. I think we still could have won it and we should have. Like, so a lot of my distrust comes from last season being a season where everything went our way, basically. It couldn't have been a better opportunity to win the league. That was the best we've played in a long time. We had a 5-point gap, at one point an 8-point gap. We were scoring goals for fun. Everything was going our way, and we still found a way to throw it all away. And oh, by the way, throw away every cup that we were in as well. It's really hard for me to, now I'm very much so looking at it sideways because I'm like, we should have won, you know? I feel like a lot of people feel that way. Let's see. FIA says Arteta spent more than everyone, but you blaming the nation state clubs. Personally, I haven't blamed any nation state clubs. I'm saying that we're not backed by a nation state. So how that's pivoted into I'm blaming nation state clubs. Not sure how we got there. But keep cooking. Lucas says transfer targets are telling me that we continue the process. We keep getting younger. We will replace Jorginho, TP, Jesus, and Zinchenko with under 25. Zeta says, I wouldn't even have much of an issue with Arteta if he wasn't so stubborn, but every season he's displaying the same patterns that I've had issues with at the prior season. And Saida, you've been on the channel for a long time, so I know you've said a lot of these things before, and we're still talking about them. But again, people are saying that it's just, how can you not trust? Everything is fine. Of course they want to win. Yeah, but their behavior is not changing, and we're also not winning. So I don't know what to tell you. Let's see. Callum says Liverpool after Brighton. What does that mean? Blaze says, Jess, if Arsenal will end up trophyless this season, that means Arteta will get heavy criticism from the media and the fans. In my opinion, Arteta is already under pressure. The pressure needs to come from the club, the media and the fans. Of course, like that will add something, but the Josh and the rest of Arsenal need to, if we were to finish trophyless again, and for me, it's always about context as well. For me, context is always key because if we were to push City or whoever is going to win I think it has to be City too, by the way. Like, I feel if anybody else wins the Premier League and it's not City and we finish behind them, questions need to be asked, because the only way that it makes sense to me that we don't win it this season is if City run away with it again, because I feel like that's the only team that it makes sense that they would win it again, and we couldn't touch it. But if Liverpool or Villa or Spurs, God forbid, any of those teams win it and we finish below them, we have to ask questions. But let's say we were to finish a point behind City and we were to go out in the semifinals of the Champions League to a Real Madrid or Man City or something like that. Those are things that I can look at and be like, you know what? That's respectable. It's actually respectable. Like, it's not something that I feel like I would sack a manager over. Now, if you finish in the top 4, but like 10 points behind the leaders that actually win the league, or you, God forbid, you finish outside of the top 4, and let's say you go out to Porto in the Champions League, then I'm really asking questions. Because again, if you go out to Porto in February, February 21st, I don't know, probably the next one is in March, then you really have no excuse but to really go for the league. So if you still fall away and you went out of the Champions League early, blah, 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 then of course questions need to be asked. So context is always key. But I do feel like there is a growing pressure amongst the fans. The media is definitely going to start asking questions. But if the club are okay with what's going on, because remember, there were a lot of fans that were discontent with Arsene for a while, and the media asked a lot of questions about Arsene for a while, but it took them almost 5 years to get to the point where they actually really sacked him. So we know Arsenal can be very sentimental and very slow to make very painful decisions. So yeah, but yeah, there's a couple of different scenarios where I could definitely see the fans turning, and one of those being finishing behind Spurs somehow finding a way to win the league, Emery finding a way to win the league, finishing behind Emery. All of those things could really, those could really fuck up things for Arteta for sure. Kamani says the snowflakes always attack when they have nothing to say. I just feel like, I don't really want to call them snowflakes or anything like that. I just feel like people, anytime we're not doing well or we start to go through a bad patch, there is like this crusade to try to make it seem like any genuine discourse about Arsenal not being in a good period, or questions around the manager, or questions around the direction that we're going in. There's a crusade to make it feel like it's just toxic. And it's just like, you guys, you need to be all the way freaking for real. Like, You just need to be all the way freaking for real. I remember when, like, the first couple of times that I went on the football terrace, there was, you know, people were like, there's Arsenal fans that were like upset by it. They were like, oh, there's just like this campaign against Arsenal on the football terrace. All these other, rival fans, they just want to talk shit about Arsenal. And I kind of saw their point, but at the same time, I think sometimes we could view any sort of criticism around Arsenal or genuine discourse as an attack, when sometimes rivals just see it a little bit more clearly than we do because they're not emotionally involved. Right? A lot of fans could have told you that United weren't really going anywhere with Ten Hag because despite them winning that Carabao Cup, they were diabolical. You know, a lot of them didn't want to hear it, but now they're all kind of singing from that same hymn sheet because as rivals, we could see it, but they couldn't see it because they were emotionally attached to the situation. So I don't always just discount conversations around Arsenal that don't sound right to me or I don't like, because sometimes you need a difference of perspective to gain perspective. But Arsenal fans don't like that. They just want everybody saying the same shit. But good luck getting millions of people saying the same things because we're not an echo chamber. The guy says Arteta owes 90% of his success to Emery. Prince Tutu says, can we talk about the next issue on board? The Arteta talk is already draining. Well, yeah, I'm just trying to make sure I get everybody's opinions out there first because we'll have about 30 more minutes to chit chat about the Bayern thing, and that's all we have to talk about. So I just want to make sure we get all the way through it. Here to there says pressure from the club would be not extending his contract until the further notice, and extension is the ultimate vote of confidence now. MR says, goodbye football have changed before is good football. Wait, good football player is sport for money, sponsor by other, and club is property. There's politics and condition for playing time of become bored. Okay, I kind of get what you're saying. Eric says Chelsea won 2 UCL titles in a very fortuitous way, just like Leicester won the EPL title going game by game. Why does Arteta always need to get through years of long process to win? I don't know. Um, I don't know. That's the question you have to ask other people because I don't necessarily feel like we should not be like this is normal that going through like 4 years of not winning anything and not really being near it is normal, but some people will argue that it's normal because of course we're doing the right things, right? So last but not least, I do want to touch on this Bayern being afraid of Arsenal, and what they're afraid of is that Arsenal will take Zubimendi because their number one target for the summer in the DM position for Bayern and Tuchel is Zubimendi. And I find that really interesting because I wouldn't be surprised if that's because they're also trying to get Xabi. Now, whether or not they get Xabi is that's whatever. Like, Xabi can end up at Liverpool or Real Madrid or whatever. But Zubimendi is going to be a hot commodity in the summer. And so hopefully Arsenal have done some sort of groundwork. But if Bayern feel like Arsenal are in a good position to get him instead of they are, then that's a good thing because Bayern lost so many targets to us last summer. It was ridiculous. Like, I love that for us. But Zubimendi is the right signing in my opinion. I feel like if you can't get a De Jong or a Barella or somebody of that level, the next level down that has potential, like world class ability or world class talent that just needs to be nurtured and developed, that Zubimendi definitely falls into that category in my opinion. I think he has everything that we would need to play in that deep line playmaker role, basically the Jorginho / Thomas Partey role, and partner Declan Rice in a pivot that would also allow Odegaard to do his best job. And we've spoken about this so many times that it's a very balanced midfield and it makes a lot of sense. But Bayern are said to be afraid that Arsenal will be Zubimendi's choice because they won't be able to compete because we've already spoken to the player. And so I think that kind of goes back to not like I don't necessarily feel like there's a pre-agreement, but I do think there's been some groundwork done that like we've actually thrown our hat into the ring. Arteta has spoken to him probably quite a bit. Hopefully he's maybe talked to some of the players, whatever. So I would imagine that if it came down between us and Bayern Munich, he would come to us. If it comes down to us or Barcelona, that's where I start to get a little bit more worried. But he's a top quality player that I hope we end up getting. And if you have to go up against Bayern, that's probably the perfect opposition because he's not going to play for Tuchel. Let's be serious. Like Tuchel's a good coach, but he ain't it, you know? So um I thought that that was really interesting that Bayern Munich are afraid or terrified Arsenal will steal their number one target. Because that's what we did all summer last summer. I mean, it was funny because when they were involved with the Declan Rice thing, I just knew that they weren't going to get him. I knew that they weren't going to get him. I was like, there's no way he's going to leave England at all. And I do not see Zubamendi going there. I cannot see it. Not right now. Maybe if they were to get Xabi, then Xabi could convince him to go there. But I still feel like we would have a little bit of a leg up there. But I just found it interesting because we're gonna take all their targets. I mean, that's what they deserve for all the years of battering us, I guess, huh? So Stool says, "What convinces you about Zubamendi?" Um, it's not really like a data thing or a statistic thing because I don't think what he does shows up well on statistics because what he does well, actually, you have to look at with the eye test, but he has a lot of good recommendations for from managers that I actually rate. When you watch him play, he looks like he always has ages of time. He never looks rushed on the ball. He always looks like he knows what he's going to do before, like he knows what he wants to do with the ball before he gets it. He it seems like a step ahead of everybody. His passing range is pretty good as well, like in terms of passing between the lines, controlling tempo, even his creative passing is pretty good. And it just all we really need, in my opinion, is a better version of Jorginho. I feel like he gives us the best balance, but he doesn't have the legs. Zubamini has that, but he can also evade pressure. He can kind of dance around pressure. He has a lot of good things about him. I actually saw that, like, even if you want to get like a statistic, he's won the most possession back in like the final third or, you know, up high or like actually in the middle third than anybody else in La Liga. He does have the physical capabilities. Now, people when they think of a physical player, they think only of PMP. They think of like a like an Onana or something like that. Not being an Onana doesn't mean that you can't be up to the physical level of the Premier League because you don't have to be a bruiser to be up to the level of the Premier League. There are plenty of small players or players that are not brutes or PMP merchants that do just fine. And again, if you know what you're going to do with the ball before you get it and you're smarter than everybody else, you're fine. Arsenal have had many technical midfielders that have done just fine. The problem is that we've had technical midfielders, but we never had the DM. Now we have it. Now we have the Declan Rice. So it's fine. I think the balance is perfect. But mostly what I like about Zubamendi is that he just feels like the type of midfielder that would balance out what we already have. And what we don't need is an Onana next to Declan Rice because that doesn't solve the progression issues that people say that we have. We need somebody that has the football brain and can execute those things at a high level. And he's definitely somebody that can do that. So it's definitely not something that, you know, I can't show you like an FB ref and be like, see all the green bars. But I would say if you watch Sociedad play, a lot of the things that he does kind of goes unnoticed, but he knows what he's doing. Like he's a smooth operator, you know. He's not going to be as exciting as Thomas Partey because obviously Thomas Partey does the drop of the shoulder and he does this and he does that, but he does a lot of those same things, but it's not as sparkly, if that makes sense. So Netweed says not accepting any defensive players unless our medical team can give them a Kevlar tendrum serum and titanium bones. Um, Lucas says Zubamendi's situation feels like Javi Martinez at Athletic when Bayern signed him. Obvious class player waiting on that big move. Fair enough. Um, let's see. Kamani says Partey had a poor Arsenal career, totally wasted his talent here. Boy says Partey not that good though. He's just a run of the mill Spanish trained DM with some African legs. That's mean. Boss J says Partey is definitely gone in the summer. Zubamendi to replace him. And the thing is, I know that a lot of people cannot envision a midfield without Thomas Partey because we went through such a long period of not being able to win a game without him. So he's been put on a proverbial pedestal for a long time. But there are plenty of midfields out there that function well without a Thomas Partey, and ours can definitely be one of them if we just get the balance right. I think our over reliance on Thomas Partey has come because we haven't recruited properly in midfield, and we bought Kai Havertz instead of buying this type of player or like a Paquetá or a Bruno Guimaraes or somebody like that. I genuinely feel like if you just put another midfielder in there of a good quality standard, we would be a lot better and we wouldn't be as critical of Declan Rice. But if we're talking about the best possible balance, I do think you need to have somewhat of a partner in there with him and then allow Odegaard to play in the pockets. I feel like that's what's best for those two. And to be honest, what's most important is getting the most out of Odegaard and Declan Rice. That's all that matters. Finding whoever's going to make them the best. And that doesn't really include Thomas Partey because no matter how you slice it, even in the short term, he's our best option, but in the long term, because of his injuries, he's never going to be the future of that midfield. So we actually, even if you don't like Declan Rice and you think Thomas Partey is better, it's inconsequential and it's very irrelevant because Thomas Partey is not going to be here and Declan Rice is going to be here. We have Odegaard and Declan Rice's prime, and Partey is like past his. So even if you want him for this season, if you love Arsenal, you should want us to replace him because that's what's best for Arsenal. Because he's injury prone. And that goes for anybody that's injury prone. Anybody that's injury prone, you should want us to move away from them because their injuries are always going to impact us, especially if they're important. So short term, you want Partey to be fit, obviously, because he's our best possible option. Long term, you should be excited about the Zubimendi news because inevitably he'd be the one to replace Thomas Partey, and that's what we need. That's what we need. So we need somebody to come in that can play 90% of the games and give that balance to the midfield that we're sorely lacking right now. Nabi Plies says, hi, Jess. Hello to you as well. Bosch Day says, facts, Odegaard and Rice need complementary piece. That's what's most important. I don't think that people look at the bigger picture. They're looking at right now what suits their agenda, what suits who they like the most, blah, blah, blah. But a 31-year-old that's broken down at that is not a part of our future, no matter how good he is. So moving away from him, whether that's, in this window, which it probably won't be, or the next window, is paramount. It's so important. And when you spend 100 million on Declan Rice, which is an astronomical investment that Arsenal have definitely probably had to stretch to make happen, instead of thinking about all the things that Declan Rice does not do, it's probably the best thing to think about what he does do and what would complement that the best. Because there are things that Declan Rice does not do as well as Thomas Partey. But again, that's pretty irrelevant to the future of this team. We need to think about what can actually balance out whatever Odegaard and Declan Rice don't do. We need to figure out who can do that and balance out the midfield. That's all that matters. That's it. That's all that matters. Nabi Ply says Thomas Partey crucial to Arsenal for the run-in. For the run-in, yes. For the future, no. But I agree with you. If he can be available, that's helpful to us because we need as many midfielders as possible. Here to there says, agreed, Jess. I just want our captain free and able to run games in the final third again. Saida says, so Kai will eventually become an expensive bench rotational player. Very frustrating because I felt Xavi Simons would have suited the left 8 role much better. I mean, we could go through a list of players that would have been better and we could have gotten into the hundreds for it. I mean, there's just no world where I feel like Havertz makes sense. It makes sense probably in Mikel Arteta's mind when they were going through what would be best because maybe they didn't feel like they could spend, they couldn't find the striker, they couldn't find the midfielder that they wanted. So this is the best in between to go for that would suit this need and that need. And it was just really a galaxy brain way of thinking about something that was probably a lot more simple to solve. And when you think about the players that went, especially in the Premier League that we could have gotten, it leaves a really bad taste in your mouth that this is what we've done. Because you're right, Kai Havertz will end up being a very expensive luxury player for Arsenal because I just don't envision there being a situation where we bring in Zubimendi, a player that Arteta's wanted for a long time, that probably fits what we need most to get Odegaard and Declan Rice going, and him sitting the bench and Kai Havertz starting. I also don't envision buying a striker and Havertz ends up starting. I don't envision Odegaard being ousted out of his spot for Kai Havertz either. So ultimately, he does end up being this very expensive guy that comes in and does a job. And when you think about how much that's going to cost wages wise and the fee, you just have to ask questions about why we needed to do that. We didn't have to do it. Um, we did it like unprovoked. That's just the strangest thing. Temmie says, Jess, you can say Partey is injury prone, but please don't disrespect his skills. I haven't. I haven't at all. Like, he's injury prone and he's a great player, but he's injury prone. So I don't know where I disrespected his skills. I can say it till I'm blue in the face. I feel like anytime you say that we need to move on from him, what people are hearing is I'm just not going to sit there and talk about how amazing he is when we don't see it enough. It's really not that important anymore. What he offers, as good as it is, we don't see it enough. So he can be an amazing player, but we don't see it enough. So I haven't disrespected his skills. We need to move on from him. To me, it's just that simple. And I don't feel like I need to go through how amazing he is anytime I talk about him to ease the blow of the reality that we need to move on from him. So Stool says, as you describe him, it sounds a bit as if he would take away a couple Rice's biggest strengths. Not sure Rice can step up his creative game to compensate for a second controller. I feel like we think too much about, okay, if he's playing in the left 8, that means that he has to be more creative. I don't think that that's necessarily what it is. I feel like, remember how Jorginho and Declan Rice played against Liverpool in the cup? It wasn't that Declan Rice was in the left 8. It wasn't like that at all. It was they were working together to do that role at the base of midfield. So Jorginho was doing some of the chefing at the base, rotate, like doing the ball rotation stuff. Declan Rice was pressing and winning the ball back. He would go high, Jorginho would go high. They would cover each other and they would take turns kind of bouncing into those positions without either one being required to be a number 10 creator, you know? And so I think we have to think a little bit differently about how that role will function if Declan Rice is in it. Because if you expect Declan Rice to be a creative midfielder when he's in that position, I think you're thinking about it wrong. I think we've seen how it works. It's more of a double pivot. It's more of a 4-2-3-1. And if you play in that way, you don't require Declan Rice to be more creative. What you require him to do is do a lot of things that he already does. He can progress the ball from deep with his carrying ability, but what you have is a pivot, a double pivot that can kind of do it all. You have the deep line playmaker, somebody that can find those seams, somebody that understands how to control the tempo, but you also have the legs and the ball winning and the interceptions and the blocks and the pressing and the ball carrying. You have the perfect double pivot that allows Odegaard to just kind of do what he does, you know? So I don't really think about it as Declan Rice would have to play as a creative midfielder. He would be playing in a double pivot, if that makes sense. DeVoe says, if Partey can play 10 games consecutively, the league will be ours because we will win them all. And that injection of steel in the midfield. I mean, that would be great. That would be great if he can do that, if he can stay fit. But we've also lost quite a few games with Partey in them. So even big games, so I don't necessarily agree that like him being in the game naturally means that we win them. Hopefully, him being in the game allows the midfield to be balanced and maybe that will solve some of the progression issues. But as long as those boys are not putting the ball in the back of the net, it's not like Thomas Partey is going to add any goals, right? So let's see how things pan out. I think a lot of people feel like Thomas Partey is gonna have a KDB effect. I don't know if he is. I don't know if he is. I want to temper my expectations, you know. Dale Carragher says big games without Rice. Listen, I don't know if any one player gets you 10 wins that we have coming back in a row. Do you know what I mean? I don't know if any player that comes back is going to mean that we just win all these games. I don't think we have any player that has that level, Nabi Plies says, if Arsenal end up empty-handed this season, should Mikel go? What do you think, Jess? I think, again, it's all about context. It depends on how close we were, who we lost to, things like that. But I do think that there should be more pressure on him if he doesn't win anything, because that will be 4 seasons of nothing, and that's quite a bit. Kamani says we need to pray for Partey to be fit first of all. I agree. Like, let's just hope that he can stay fit. And I do think he will make us better. I'm not denying that. But I'm just not going to get my hopes up, you guys. I've seen this movie a lot, so let's just wait. Here to There says our attack is so out of sync, hard to see it turning around at the snap of a finger. I think a lot of that has to do more with Arteta than the players. Like, I think he just has to loosen the handbrake. We've spoken about that. Loosen the handbrake, allow them to get closer together, allow them to switch positions, and see if that helps a little bit. If it doesn't, then maybe we have bigger problems. So, but yeah, you guys, we've been talking for almost 2 hours, but I thought, why not? It's Friday. You ain't got no job. And you got shit to do. Okay, if you don't know where that's from, we're not friends anymore. But listen, a new Canon Club episode will be out on Monday. I will probably do a stream actually, I am doing a stream on Sunday night with James from AFTV. So look forward to that. So Sunday, stream with James. Monday, Canon Club leading up to the Forest game. Wednesday, live version of the Canon Club on this channel. So you guys will be able to see loads of stuff so we can argue more and have more fun. So yeah. But Blank Face Killer says Smokey, exactly. That's my favorite movie, you guys, just in case you didn't know. But like this video and subscribe to the channel on your way out. Really appreciated all the commentary, whether we agree or not. This is not an echo chamber. This is Arsenal. We have difference of opinions, and yeah, we should listen to them all because they're all valid. As long as you're articulating yourself and it's not about agenda, your opinion, I feel like, is valid, of course. So yeah, make sure you guys subscribe, like, set notifications so you don't miss another thing. Next time you guys will see me again is on Sunday with James from AFTV. You guys will not want to miss that. And I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Enjoy your weekend, and I'll see you guys later. Bye, guys.